Hello, everyone. My name is William Mucker. I am a client executive with Camaplan, and I would like to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, Energize Your Portfolio with Neuromodulation Wellness Technologies with Ellyn Ito and Laate Olukotun with Innerstill. As a quick note, please be aware that Ellyn and Laate will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. However, feel free to use the Q&A function on your screen. Whenever those questions cross your mind, they will be saved and addressed once the presentation portion ends and the Q&A portion begins. Before we get started, I have a brief disclosure to go through. Everything presented in today's webinar is strictly for educational purposes. Camaplan is a neutral third-party administrator of IRAs. We are not attorneys, CPAs, or financial advisors. If it comes to a time where you need advice in any one of those fields, we highly recommend you consult with your team of professionals. We are more than happy to be a part of the dialogue with your team of professionals to make sure the investment process is quick and seamless. We do not sell any investments at Camaplan, nor do we endorse any products. We will never call you about the next best investment opportunity. We believe that you should always do your own due diligence before investing your money, whether it be your retirement funds or otherwise. Once you have found the investment that is right for you, we will help you open your account, fund that account, and facilitate the transaction into that investment. Here is my contact information. If you or anyone that you know who you believe can benefit from the information have any questions about what is discussed in the presentation today and how it applies to self-direction, please do not hesitate to contact me. I would be more than happy to help. And without further ado, I'll pass the controls over to you guys.
Great. Well, thank you, Will. We're super excited to share what we know about the neuromodulation industry. It is a super exciting place to be, and it is growing. It is an area that we're glad you're here listening in, and there's more to learn. So let's see, I think I have control now. Let me just... Sorry, let me just fast forward here. So let's talk about what neuromodulation is. So it's a big word, neuromodulation, but what it is a technology, or it can be a drug that affects or modulates the nerve activity in a specific area. Today, we are going to be specifically speaking to the bioelectric technologies that help to solve a number of health issues and help to up-level performance. Oh, Laate, you're on mute.
A wonderful beginning. So everybody on this call, in fact, everybody that you know and love, everybody that you've ever come across is somewhere on a continuum from floundering to flourishing. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a nurse, an economist. Everybody that you know and love is actually on this continuum and is finding their way as best they can through the world. Now, interestingly enough, there we go. Despite our best intentions, as parents, as children, business professionals, you name it, we are all making our way through the world as best we can. And that means that sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down, right? So it means that sometimes we're moving through the world as best we can. And you might be on stage. You might be on a world stage. In fact, somebody like Van Morrison, famously, for 10 years, he created beautiful hits like Brown Eyed Girl. And then at some point in time, he realized he had stage fright. Can you imagine that? He makes his money through being on stage, and suddenly he realized that he couldn't even face the stage. So sometimes he'd actually get on stage and turn right around and do his concert facing towards the back because he was so terrified of the crowd. That can be somebody that is a mother who just on a daily basis says, you know what, I can't do it. Or a father, I can't face what I'm dealing with at this point in time. That's a really challenging place to be. And that's also true of professional golfers. In that moment, when you're making contact with your swing, you are, from a world's perspective, flourishing, right? But in that split-second decision of how you're actually going to make contact with that ball, you could flub it or you could nail it. It's really important to try to figure out a way to navigate that world. And that's all of us all the time, every single day. What that means is that there's a huge opportunity to help everybody in times that they're up, where they could perhaps even be performing even better, and definitely times when they're down, when the world seems to be against them, when they're stressed out or really feeling a lot of anxiety. There are places for us to help these types of individuals, which is all of us, which means unlike other industries that you might be familiar with, for instance, like real estate, where there are market effects where sometimes your portfolio feels like it's a little bit down because of factors that are out of your control. The reality is when you look at individuals, everybody is struggling every day to do their best, or sometimes just to do better, right? So it means that there are always, regardless of how the market is doing, ways to help people in a neuromodulation perspective. I think you have control, Ellyn. There we go. Let's see.
Ellyn, I think you're muted as well.
We are partying here, people. So I need some neuromodulation, actually. No, I'm kidding. So when we think about the approaches and how Laate kind of framed up this whole continuum from floundering to flourishing, when we look at the history of neuromodulation that began years ago, back in the 1800s, think electroconvulsive therapy. It's come a long, long way since then. But many of the approaches came because, and this is one of the big market drivers, because of chronic conditions that were not responsive to modalities out there or drugs. So deep brain stimulation for epilepsy, for example, that came about in the 1990s. That's actually where you implant a stimulator into the brain to help modulate brain activity. There's pain therapy, sacral nerve and peripheral stimulation. Again, these are implanted so that it helps to alter the pain signals throughout the body. Same thing with spinal cord stimulators. There's a lot that's going on right now around spinal cord stimulation for balance and gait. Transcranial direct current. These are currents that through electropads go through the skin and help to energize or move electrical current through the neurons to help with things like cognition and motor and depression or anxiety. That technology has been around since the late 90s. Actually, our inventor has actually invented one of these devices. He's also invented a pain device. Transcranial magnetic. Many of you may have heard about this newest technology. This is where you actually position magnets at certain places on the brain. That electromagnetic field, again, helps to modulate brain activity. And these are things for, again, drug-resistant depression. We have seen some uses recently around helping with other conditions like PTSD or addiction. There's trigeminal electrical stimulation. This is a really cool technology that actually stimulates the trigeminal nerve through the tongue. And this has been shown to help with things like balance and gait for those who have suffered concussion, or for those who are challenged with MS, as well as more recently for sleep apnea. And then there's vagus nerve stimulation. And vagus nerve stimulation has recently, again, it has gotten a lot of press because the vagus nerve, this is a picture that you see here, is responsible. It's the longest nerve in your body, and it's responsible for all of your autonomic or automatic functions of your body, including how your heart beats, your breathing rate, your digestion, and the vagus nerve is responsible for balancing your fight or flight state. And so all of these approaches as it relates to bioelectrical stimulation has been shown to affect many of these disease states. We also know that things like vagus nerve stim and transcranial stimulation has been experimented with, and there are products out there that help to up-level performance. So going back to what some of the market drivers are, why are people turning to bioelectric current? Again, prevalence of chronic conditions that are not responding to modalities that are out there right now, the rising incidences of neurological diseases where there are no cures for right now. There's a lot of experimentation around that, research, growing awareness around mental health, and a strong desire for many people to stop the long-term use of medications or not even start that to begin with. This focus around, or an increased focus around the integrated nature of the body and the desire to look at other modalities that help the body to heal itself without the long-term use of medications. Let me just advance my screen here. Hold on, let's see. Oh my gosh.
I can take over that. No worries.
I'm so sorry. I don't.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. There we go.
Great. And so a lot of the benefits around these electroceuticals, and we're throwing out these terms because these are terms that you'll hear when you're looking into the industry: neuromodulation, neurostim, bioelectric, electroceutical. Some of those benefits involve no interaction with medications. So many times when you have a heart issue, you might be on statins or something to lower blood pressure, and another issue comes up, you might take another medication that may actually impact the effectiveness of the other drugs you're taking. In this case, bioelectrical stimulation, it does not interact with medications. Many of these technologies are non-addictive and non-habit forming. So it provides a benefit without getting hooked onto something. It's relatively quick acting. And when I say relatively, people are used to taking a pill and having an immediate effect. In this case, bioelectric technologies sometimes have a very quick effect, but it often requires sessions, a number of repeated sessions to see an enduring effect. And so not everybody is willing to wait that amount of time, but when you consider the ability to help with a condition without the drug interactions, these are becoming more and more attractive to people. As mentioned before, it helps the body to heal itself. Again, using those the bioelectric pathways and helping the body to balance out neurochemicals that allow the body to heal from within is something, again, that those benefits that people are often seeking. And some of these technologies, not all of them, there's a body of research around each of those modalities I spoke to, but they can resolve acute issues, meaning that the long-term use of some of these technologies are not always necessary. Now, we know for very challenging neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and dementia, it seems that there will be repeated use in order to stave off the progression of those diseases. But for other conditions, that long-term use is not necessarily needed, particularly if it's a performance-related, if you're looking to improve or up-level. So some of the limitations that are associated with some of these existing solutions. So we talked a little bit about the deep brain stimulators, the vagus nerve stimulators that you can actually see with this little blue man here. These are implanted devices. And so, so that surgery is required. Surgery is not without risk. They've gotten very good at it, but not everybody wants to go under the knife unless it's really, unless it can't be solved otherwise. In that sense, some of these technologies are difficult to access. For example, transmagnetic stimulation, there's a chair that you see there. You have to go someplace to access that technology. It can be very expensive. And some of these technologies are complicated to use. And when we say complicated to use, parameters need to be set. You need to have a great understanding of what's going on with somebody's neuronal environment to understand what the right parameters are and what the right usage is. And so it can be complicated for practitioners to implement. And we'll talk a little bit about the commercialization aspects of this in a moment. But there are some side effects that often come with some of these solutions. And again, research is always moving forward. Research is always moving forward. And so there is a desire to resolve these. But for example, going back to the implanted devices, electromagnetic fields can actually create burns internally, or it can it can be very difficult. It can be mortal. So some of these side effects are things that people don't always want to enter. Now, on the commercialization aspects, and what I'm talking about currently are these medical related devices, is that being able to implement some of these technologies in a way that exists with a clinician's workflow. And we'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. But technology is really exciting and wonderful, but if it is difficult to implement or commercialize, that adoption just takes longer. So then we move to some of these do-it-yourself or direct-to-consumer products, and there are a ton of those out there, especially as we start to look at, these stimulators getting more attention. So TENS. Probably many of you may have heard of the TENS unit that is typically used for muscular type situations. It's very high levels of stim. You can buy one off of Amazon. And one of the things that we're seeing are, because of the power of things like the vagus nerve and transcranial stimulation, there are your do-it-yourselfers where they are connecting up a TENS unit to your vagus, points along your vagus nerve. We think that we know that, that it may be relatively efficacious. We're not sure because there are not a lot of studies around some of these things. We know it's affordable, but it is not always safe. And this is one of the big areas when we look at off the shelf or consumer products. All of these technologies require the setting, the parameter setting. It is impossible to know exactly what it is, again, your neurochemical environment needs. And so there's always a risk of overstimulating. It's known as hyperpolarization or saturation. And so when you are overstimulating, you can actually revert to a state where you were before, because your body just simply can't take any more of that energy or those electrons. Or it may take much, much longer in future sessions to have any sort of effect. So as you're considering these different technologies and you're looking into the market, both from a medical perspective and direct to consumer, you're definitely going to want to consider the safety of the unit, the potential for overstimulation, the ability to understand exactly what research surrounds a given technology. One of the things that we found as we've been looking at this market is that many of these technologies will borrow translational research. And there's a ton of research out there around, for example, vagus nerve stimulation, where there have been studies that are absolutely valid. But what is not clear is how it actually relates to a given technology that is being marketed using that research. So it's really important that as you're looking at some of these products, that you consider the research that's being presented, how it relates to a given device, and whether or not it can actually be efficacious or safe. And because of that, what we're seeing, and we've had conversations with many people, there are many commercialization challenges. We were meeting with one person who basically said, I have 28 of these in my closet at home. And, I buy them, it works, and then I throw it away. And so, and this is one of the things that you'll want to think about again. What is the track record? What is its efficacy? Is it going to last? And so, and we are very happy, by the way, to talk with anyone around what that landscape looks like, either from a medical perspective or from a consumer product perspective. So, oh, and just to let you know a little bit about us and why we think we can talk about this. We are Innerstill. Our company is actually delivering these bioelectric nerve stimulation solutions. And when we say solutions, it's not just the technology, but we're really relying on the expertise of our team and the fact that we've been there and done that. And so back in, 1980, our inventor and chief scientific officer, Jakob Katz-Nelson, began doing research in vagus nerve stim. He did his first non-invasive rabbit research, animal research on vagus nerve stim because there was actually a shortage of painkillers in Russia, St. Petersburg, and he was the head of a pediatric unit. So he and his colleagues figured out how to use electrical stimulation to relax the body and mimic analgesia. He came over to the US. He was recruited to continue work. He actually commercialized his first pain device in Russia in the 80s. He continued his research. And in the 90s, late 90s, he continued to research transcranial stimulation and launched a device, a transcranial electrical stimulator for depression and anxiety. And that's how he connected up with Hank Beckoff. Hank is a retired psychotherapist. He was retired at the time that he started working with Jakob. And he, in his profession, was really frustrated with the fact that all you can do was assign a diagnosis and put somebody on meds. And he knew about the integrated nature of the body. He, in fact, started one of the largest integrative medical centers in the Pennsylvania tri-state area well before its time. And it's during that time that he began to work with Dr. Katz-Nelson using this previous device. And he found so much success with it. He eventually teamed up with Dr. Beth Dupree. This was back in 2009-ish, I believe. No, 2013, sorry. Where Dr. Beth Dupree, she is a force to be reckoned with, this woman. She is one of the most world-renowned breast surgeons because she takes such a patient-centered approach. And in dealing with breast cancer, you will hear her talk about it. And I would encourage you to check out her website. She's also an integrative MD. And her approach to patient care was to look at the whole person. And she recognized that while she could cut out the cancer, she couldn't cut out the fear or the anxiety or the inflammation. And so she began sending her patients to Hank's clinic to use the technologies, and she saw such huge improvements with her patients that she continued to champion the technology. I joined Innerstill in 2021. I have close to a 10-year history now in neurostimulation technologies. My previous company was an amazing technology, trigeminal nerve stimulation. And during the pandemic, my teenage son became distraught, and I didn't want to go the medication route. I tried 3 over-the-counter technologies. I was looking for a vagus nerve stimulator, and Beth, through a hospital affiliation, introduced me to Hank. And this was in January of 2021. The impact was so monumental. I ended up helping them launch the company in May of 2021. It was very, very clear as we were working with the prototypes that we absolutely needed a product professional, somebody who has lived customer experience and product development. And so Laate Olukotun joined us and has been just instrumental. And when I think about our team, I think about the fact that we have been there and done that. Hank has proven out the commercialization model of the technologies. Jakob has a life's work in neurostim. Beth has seen everything that's out there as it relates to modalities and treatment options for pain. She wants things that don't interfere, drugs that don't interfere with her treatment with her patients who have cancer. And so we have kind of this entire, the feasibility, yes, we can do it. The demand is absolutely out there, and the viability, it's in terms of the upside and what there is to offer. And so we are really excited. And this is, I pull up our team because I'm excited about our team. And I think we're pretty we kick butt, sorry. But it's also important to recognize as you're looking at the teams of some of the companies that you may be evaluating, who is at the center of these teams and who has the passion and the values and the experience to make it happen. And I believe, and I know that our team is that team, and particularly as we add on our advisors. All right, so see, I get all excited about our team as well as the technology in any event. And so let's talk a little bit about then, the team and what it is we're doing. And I'll hand it back over to Laate, our product guru.
Right. So going back to this continuum from floundering to flourishing, the truth is, and the unfortunate truth is, that there are millions of people that are suffering from all kinds of ailments, from stress, anxiety, insomnia, and many, many more. What we decided to do was, recognizing that there were a lot of places to play with neuromodulation technologies, was focus first on something that we felt we could address fairly quickly in the short term. And so based on the numbers that we found, and I'll just read a few because it is fascinating, it's mind-blowing and scary, honestly. There are 20 million people that suffer from moodiness, apathy, inability to focus. There are 40 million suffering from stress and racing thoughts. There's 60 million suffering from sleep issues and unrest. And let's not even forget that, of course, COVID really walloped the world. So people are dealing with all kinds of things that are internal to them, and it manifests itself in ways that are unfortunate. Recognizing that, we decided to use both Yakov's and Hank's brilliance to bear on something that we thought was immediately addressable. And that was to focus specifically on stress, anxiety, and insomnia. What you'll see over time is we recognize that there are a lot of other, we'll call them verticals for a moment. They're not really, but they're areas where we can play with the various technologies. And so in that interest, what we decided to do was focus specifically on vagus nerve stimulation for treating these ailments, these issues. And the first product that we are developing, that we're launching with, is called MindVibe. It is a multimodal device. What that means is it basically addresses multiple forms of stimulation. So Ellyn had mentioned those different technologies before. Everybody in the past has been focused on a single mode, a single method of addressing any kind of specific ailment. In this case, we're actually stimulating both the vagus nerve, which is actually accessible through a bunch of places. As you saw, it's like a big roadmap around the body. It's actually, vagus comes from wandering. So that's what that means. Vagus for wandering, not Las Vegas. And as a result of it wandering so much, you can actually touch it, or you can connect with it in various places. So where we're specifically focused is in the concha cavum, which is kind of like the pocket of your ear, just before your ear canal. And that and then a point on your neck creates a closed loop. So that's one closed loop. And then we have two more places that we play. It's on either both the right and the left earlobes. And so you see our model, who's actually one of our founders, Blake. She's using the device for a very short period of time. So unlike some of the devices, especially on the DIY side, the devices that you were seeing there were kind of play at your own risk, meaning that you turn it on, you kind of say to yourself, that felt a little strong, or maybe that's not strong enough, maybe I'll crank it up a little bit. That's not how this device works. This device is based on parameters that were established through scientific research and scientific studies, and through Yakov and Hank's brilliance in terms of what is the most effective method for us to address the concerns that people have. So that means that you sit back and relax, or you can sit back and relax. You can also meditate if you wanted to. In this form of the device, we've had people walk around a room while using the device, and you are using it for only 25 minutes. So That is 25 minutes that you're attached while you are hanging out and enjoying what's on a screen. We actually have a little app that's attached to the device. The app itself, when you first connect, it asks you 5 questions, which are basically wellness questions from the World Health Organization. It's called the WHO 5. The beautiful thing about that is it allows us to get a baseline of how you were doing beforehand and how you're doing after that 25 minutes. And so we're able to collect that data. And over time, what we're going to do with that data is be able to really trace not just an individual's experience and how they're feeling over time, but also perhaps all of the participants' experience in a very safe way. So through HIPAA compliance, meaning that everybody's data is safe. But for the purpose of research, it can really help us, especially because we're very focused on the research branch of what we're doing. We're always in an R&D mode where we're always trying to come up with better solutions and making certain that we're able to address people's concern in a really specific way. The nice thing about this device as well is that it lets us know, let's say an electrode isn't connected as well. The app will actually let people know that they just need to reconnect something. It's a very simple process that is led by a clinician, by a coach, actually. So Vibers, as we call them, the people that participate in using MindVibe, go to a coaching location. We have certified MindVibe coaches who have locations where people will just come and use this device. So you might be asking, can I buy one? Is this something that's for my home? In our model, it's not. This is something you're actually going to go to a facility to be able to be connected for these 25-minute sessions. And after you simply complete 5 sessions, 5 25-minute sessions over roughly 5, 6, 8 days, you're done. And you use it as you want to after that. So you can come back for an individual session. But basically what we've decided on is a 5-session format. And the basic reason for that is through our research, what we found was that 5 sessions basically improves things really nicely. In fact, we have an efficacy of, believe it or not, of over 90%. In other words, people come out of these sessions over time and end up in a better place 90% of the time. Actually, Ellyn, do you want to speak to MindVibe coaching?
Yeah, and so one of the things that we found, again, looking at the wellness market, the consumer wellness technology. So we're launching MindVibe as under the FDA wellness device exemption. We won't sell to any sort of medical indication. It will just help to improve certain chronic conditions. But what was really important to us as we thought about commercializing the technology is the fact that we didn't want this shoved into a closet, right? We wanted to make sure that people understood its use, even though it's incredibly simple. And because Hank has done this before with a previous technology, we knew that by launching to wellness centers, that it would make it very easy for that wellness center or for that coach or that practitioner to have this fold in very nicely with their current operational flow. Current, no pun intended. Sorry. One of the things I learned from other technologies is if you are looking to commercialize a technology in such a way that it completely upsets a given operational flow. So for example, if you have a stimulator that helps to improve balance, but it requires that a physical therapist work with somebody for multiple hours a day, every day for 2 or 3 weeks, it becomes much slower to adopt. And so as we thought about launching this technology, we wanted to make sure that it'll align very nicely with that coach's goal of revenue share. And so this is why initially we're launching through our coaches. Down the line, at some point down the line, these will be available for home use. But initially we'll be launching these through our coaches.
Yeah, and it's important to say that coaches do not have to be doctors. They don't have to be psychotherapists. This could actually be an entrepreneur. It's somebody that's basically set themselves up to be able to deliver this kind of service. So a natural fit, obviously, is a kind of talk therapy. What we found is that, for instance, when Hank is working with a Viber, people enjoy talking with Hank. So it's I mentioned this idea that you just kind of, you're not doing anything with the device. Think of it kind of like being on a closed loop course where you're not doing anything. You don't control the car. The car is actually going up and down these paths that are predetermined. We've actually set up the road for you, and you just sit back and relax. And somebody like Hank is going to point out that maybe you hadn't noticed that beautiful scene over to your left. There's that beautiful mountain, which is just some exploration of something that you're talking about in that moment. So it just kind of helps you, puts you in that place. What we found is sometimes people that meditate regularly can get into that location really quickly, meaning that they just kind of hit that really nice point. And then, of course, it begs the question, well, how do we know? How do we know it's working, right? In the earliest days, we actually used to do really simple measurements like sleep. How did you sleep that next day? And what we found was typically people had a really groggy night of sleep. They woke up having really slept a lot deeper than they normally would. But there are also biometric measurements, including heart rate variability, or HRV. For those of you who have an Apple Watch, it is embedded in your Apple Watch, not quite at the level of sophistication that you really need to look at it. But HRV is a very specific, kind of touchy measurement, but it is really effective. If you do the same thing every day to measure it, you can really get to the details of the measurements. And the beautiful thing about that is we've used HRV to look at the analysis as well. So without further ado, we'll move on to just talk about locations. So
yeah, real quickly, just to add on, we've been talking about some of the struggling. There's actually a sports athletic trainer. We've had a couple of these who've talked about how there are a ton of diagnostics out there to look at the health and the performance of an athlete. And they're very excited about using a vagus nerve stimulator such as ours to allow their athletes, again, to up level. And so when we think about locations and this network, for some of you who might have real estate holdings with wellness centers, state-of-the-art training centers, spas, this technology is something that can be an accretive revenue stream with not much investment at all. And so again, as you're looking at the market, think about those things that give ease of use and ease of cash generation.
Perfect. Great. And I mentioned the 90% efficacy. I think we'll fly through this because we got through this slide. So basically, this is showing the efficacy that after 2 weeks, 92% of people actually had saw benefits from the device, from the use of the device. Now let's actually give a testimonial, or get a testimonial from one person. So we've had a lot of patients. We've probably seen over 400 patients or Vibers at this point in time, well over 400. And really, we can speak to this, but it's a lot more fun, frankly, when you hear it from somebody else. So this is Olivia. We'll just have her speak for a moment.
I felt too numb to
Here we go.
Hello, I'm Olivia Tombeck, and this is some of my story. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression when I was 12 years old. I was prescribed Lexapro, which helped with the anxiety, but turned me into a lifeless, emotionless robot. I felt too numb to process how I was actually feeling, so I just stopped taking it. I was admitted to a child psychiatric hospital for a week after a suicide attempt when I was 15, and luckily was unsuccessful. The doctor switched me to Wellbutrin, and like the Lexapro, it made me feel dull and sluggish, and also took away my appetite. I lost too much weight, and it did nothing to help my anxiety. I was still struggling daily, barely able to function or get out of bed. I was admitted to the hospital for a second time this year back in June. They tried Prozac this time, but I stopped taking it after a few weeks because of the same side effects. And I have been on and off medication for years, and nothing has really worked for me. My mom met Dr. Beth Dupree, and she heard of my hospitalization and offered a different solution. August of 2022, my mom flew us out to Arizona to try a new treatment with MindVibe and Tessa vagal and transcranial stimulators. Immediately after the first treatment, I was able to eat a whole meal without having to take a break or eat it so slowly that everybody gets up before I can finish. I was shocked and excited to be able to eat and had not been able to get a full meal down in years. Another immediate change I saw was sleep. I'm usually tossing and turning around for hours before finally falling asleep. Instead, I lay down and my mind wasn't racing at 1,000,000 miles per second. My body felt calm and I haven't had trouble falling asleep since. These treatments saved my life. And now that I don't have to take medicine, that makes me feel numb and no appetite, I feel like a functioning, normal 19-year-old girl. And I'm so thankful for Dr. Beth for all these treatments. Thank you.
I mean, every time I hear that, I'm just blown away. So, and we've had so many of those kind of testimonials. And in the interest of time, Ellyn, we've got a few more minutes. So you want to?
I'll just fly through this right now. And again, these are just our numbers as it relates to MindVibe specifically. In terms of 2 users per day yields $5,000 per month per device. So we see that growth, and this is this growth is completely doable. And so again, as you're looking at the commercialization models of some of these companies, you're going to want to think about what that means from units and production and where that leaves in terms of upside. But MindVibe is just the start for us. And that's the other thing, is you're considering companies and technologies that you're looking at. This is just the start. When we think about the other conditions that are out there, remember that big bubble. I'm getting ahead of myself. When you looked at the revenue for where we were before, in terms of our growth, it's tiny, tiny, tiny in comparison to what the vagus nerve market looks like. And so there's so much room to play here. And it's well worth, you're definitely looking into this, because it's very, very exciting in terms of the possibilities that are available. I would say that in terms of the technologies, again, look at some of the pros and cons as you're considering investments to make. Then when we talk about the big bubble, that first slide that Laate showed you in terms of the need, our next technologies will address medical indications. So you heard Olivia speak to some of those medical indications. We will not market MindVibe for those, but our follow-on technologies, we have another multimodal vagus nerve stimulator and a non-invasive deep brain stimulator that will address some of those other medical indications. And again, these are patented or patent pending technologies. We can use our existing network and those that we are aligned with to help us launch and do research. So again, there are a lot of large corporations and public companies that have been in this field for the past 10, 20 years. I would encourage you to look at some of the newer creative technologies that exist right there, who have learned from some of those mistakes and who understand this commercialization environment, so you can get a really good sense of where a return will come as it relates to potential investments in the neuromod market. The other thing I would say real quickly is some of these technologies may be very accretive to your other holdings. And so when we look at going back to our Prince technologies, accretive, combined, that revenue and that return is significant. Again, it is just a portion of that $1 billion neuromod market. And so as we launch in some of these wellness centers and as we eventually continue our growth path, we know we're going to take a nice bite out of that in delivering these very kind of do no harm modalities. And that's the key thing, right? No drug interactions, do no harm, the ability to help the body to heal itself. And again, there's lots of research that's needed, but there's so much that we've been able to get done so far. And there's a lot that's going on in these other fields. So for example, when we talk about our medical technologies, we have an addiction study that is lined up. We are going to be doing a dementia study as well as a Parkinson's studies. So our anecdotal experience that we've seen with our technologies will be able to prove out through that clinical research. Again, just in terms of talking about the team, and I'll cut it short here in just a bit. Our team as a whole, we have our founding members, and we have our really other key people, as well as our board of advisors, who are just kind of, in my opinion, top notch. Everything from people who've been in the startup ecosystem to people who've commercialized neuromodulation technologies in the medical device space, to people who've run wellness companies, to advertising executives who understand the marketing space in health and wellness, to manufacturing professionals, to astronauts and Olympians. And they've just been super helpful in helping us get to this next level. Again, think about, as you look at these companies, who is a part of that team, and what is it they're offering. So I think that's it. If anyone has any questions, I would, again, reach out to me. We love to talk about this stuff. Even if we trip over our words, we are so passionate about what it can do for the health and wellness of people. And for those of you who may want to experience it, you can reach out to us as well.
Great. Thank you, Ellyn and Laate, for the great presentation. I'm going to steal the screen away from you, but I do want to remind everybody to use the Q&A function. Now use the chat, pose any questions you have for Ellyn or Laate. They'll be addressed after I do have a brief presentation I want to go through. It's an abbreviated version of our self-directed 101 presentation to give you guys a little bit more of an understanding about how to use your retirement funds in situations where you don't want to be tied to the stock market or, publicly traded assets, and you want to, diversify and dive into these alternative investments. So the first question is, what is a self-directed IRA? I get this question a lot. People who start the application with us look at the options of IRAs they can open, and they're like, where is self-directed? So self-directed is just an adjective. The accounts you open up with us are no different than, from a rules perspective, as the ones that you open with Schwab or Fidelity. You'll go to Schwab or Fidelity or TD Ameritrade or whoever it may be and say, hey, is my account self-directed? And they'll be like, yes, it's self-directed, but you can use your funds for the investments on this list. With a true self-directed IRA, there is no list. With Camaplan, you find the investment that is right for you, and we'll help facilitate that transaction. So investing in what you know, understand, and control versus using hope as your strategy. This is a quote from one of our clients. It's, like I said, rather than being tied to a company where you have no control in, and if it goes under, you walk away with nothing. You get to invest into physical assets that are tangible, that that you have experience with, and you can capitalize your retirement funds in that environment, in that tax advantage environment. What accounts can be self-directed? So you have your tax deferred accounts and your tax-free accounts. You have your personal accounts, your traditional IRA and your Roth IRA, tax deferred and tax-free respectively. Then you have the employer-linked plans like the SEP IRA, the SIMP IRA, the 401ks and Roth-like 401ks. You have your HSA, which is the only type of account like itself, which is tax deferred for the contributions, and if for an eligible medical expense, is tax-free on the back end. So it's unlike any other type of account. It's also very great. And you have your educational savings account, ESAs or covered Ls, for the younger individuals who are planning on saving for higher education. All of these can be self-directed, and all of these accounts are something that we offer. Now, a good visual we like to use, and I have a nice chart after this, on $100,000 earned from different avenues of investing. What do you keep? So if you just took your W-2 salary and you went out and you invested into something and you earned $100,000 back, you're paying your Social Security, Medicare taxes, your employer tax, federal, state, local taxes. You pay, in this example, it's roughly 40% of those funds go back to the government, and you walk away with $60,000. Then you take some passive income and you reinvest that, and you earn $100,000 back. In this example, it's only about 25%, and you're walking away with $75,000. Now, with your tax-free and tax-deferred accounts, you invest those in your IRAs and your Roth IRAs. You earn $100,000, you keep $100,000. There is an asterisk next to the traditional IRA, because at the end, when you take a distribution, you're paying taxes on that $100,000. The Roth IRA, you take a distribution of $100,000, you pay zero taxes. That's $100,000 in your pocket. Oh, a little too far ahead. Here's a better visual on that example where you invest $50,000 over 40 years at a 10% rate of return using different avenues of investment. You have your taxable funds in the blue, your tax deferred funds in the light green, and your tax-free funds in the dark green. Over 40 years, the taxable funds only earn about $700,000. It's important to note that the light green, the tax deferred, and the tax-free both earn $2.2 million. However, in the tax deferred account, when you took that distribution, you end up paying $700,000 in taxes, whereas your friend who invested with a Roth IRA, they're walking away with $2.2 million cash, no taxes. So we're a little partial to the Roth IRAs. So what can I invest in with the self-directed investments? So you have your real estate, your residential, commercial real estate. You can buy plots of land as well. You have your notes and mortgages, secured, unsecured, safe agreements, privately traded companies. Like I mentioned before, these are the companies that aren't publicly traded, not on the stock market. They're usually through a subscription agreement, and you invest into these, privately traded companies. Precious metals, there are some exceptions to that. And then that it's basically up to your imagination. I've seen some wild things with people investing in, sheep selling the wool, people buying trees, selling the fruit, people buying bees, selling the honey. Really amazing things that people have done with self-directed IRAs. But the top four are the main things that our clients invest in. Now, there are some rules when investing out of an IRA that, you have to be aware of before you making your investments. It's not just like investing your personal funds. The main key points are no self-dealing, no personal use. It has to be an arm's length transaction. So if it were real estate that you're purchasing, for example, you can't go in and live in the property. You can't go in and work on the property. You're not paying taxes on the income earned by this investment. So the IRS wants you to go out and pay somebody a competitive price that is going to be paying taxes on that income. There are some disqualified persons. The people in blue are disqualified from receiving direct benefit and providing a direct benefit. The people in green are okay. And so grandparents, parents, yourself as the account holder, your spouse, children, grandchildren, they're all prohibited from, in the event of real estate, from living in the property, working on the property, basically. And these are any entities that these people own 50% or more of as well are prohibited. So they're basically meaning trying to make sure that you're making investment for investment purposes. Nobody disqualified is receiving any benefits. Now, your brothers, sisters, your siblings, your nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, they're okay for whatever reason it may be. I should probably do some more research on why they're not prohibited, but I'm sure there's a good reason. It's just the IRS, so it's hard to follow. Now, how does the process work? So the first step would be, let's say you're coming in from a traditional IRA, you would want to open up a traditional IRA with us at Camaplan or a tax deferred account similar to that. Camaplan.com takes about 15 minutes. You can do it online. Now, how do you fund your account? You can either do it the normal way where you contribute, or if you have existing accounts like an IRA, you'll do a transfer from the existing IRA to the IRA you set up with us. You can do as many of those as you like in a given year. Those are not taxable, nor are they reportable. We request the funds on your behalf from your current custodian, and then they send the funds based off the instructions to the account you have with us here. It's coming from a 401k and you're moving into an IRA. It's a little bit different. It'll be a rollover, which is reportable, but if done right, is not taxable. We can initiate those transactions like we can from an IRA. So you have to initiate that with your plan administrator, and then they send the check to Camaplan. We tell people to expect this process, whether it be a transfer or rollover, to take roughly about 2 weeks. But there are so many factors that go into it. I've seen people get funded as quickly as the next day, and I've seen people that have waited 2 or 3 weeks. It depends on the custodian, their processing timelines, whether they're sending it via check or wire. If it's sent via check, we have to wait for the postal service, so on and so forth. Next step is to choose your investment. You find the investment that is right for you. Then you send in the supporting documents into Camaplan with our asset purchase directive. We review those documents, sign on behalf of the IRA as third-party administrator, and then within 2 or 3 business days of receiving the paperwork in good order, we'll send the funds to the investment. The profits come back into the account, and then you can rinse and repeat. Or if you're in between deals, you can transfer back to your brokerage account where you're doing publicly traded assets, and then when you find a deal, transfer back into Camaplan. So in entirety, on average, the entire process should take about 3 weeks if you're just getting started, but it could be much quicker. It could take longer. Again, there are a number of variables to it, but we try to make it as quick and seamless as possible. What do we do as a third-party administrator? You're required by the IRS to have a custodian for your retirement plan that is doing the reporting to the IRS on the value at the end of every year. Like I said, we're a neutral third-party administrator of IRAs. We don't give any investment advice. We're not tax professionals, CPAs, or attorneys. And what we do is we keep record of all the transactions, and at the end of every year report to the IRS at the end of the value of the IRA. And we're part of your team of professionals. So if you have a CPA, a financial advisor, or an attorney, you want to be brought into the loop, we're more than happy to speak with them and make sure that everything's set up based off your professionals' advice. Here is just a little bit of the information, IRS publications, to show you that I didn't pull all this information out of thin air. If you have any trouble sleeping at night, keep these by your bedside, and I'm sure it'll help a lot. And then lastly, here's my contact information one last time. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or anybody at Camaplan. We'd be more than happy to help. So like I said, I think this is a good time for questions for Ellyn, Laate, myself. Please use that Q&A function, that chat, and we're going to kick over to that right now. I see that we do have a question right now. This looks like to be directed to you, Ellyn and Laate. What are your plans for Parkinson's dementia testing?
Sure. So right now we have a group that study that we are in the process of moving forward. We're essentially waiting for devices to do the Parkinson's and dementia testing under an IRB controlled setting. That we are hoping that will take place within the next several months. However, we do have some anecdotal experience using our technologies, our wellness technologies. And again, when I say anecdotal, these are people that that Hank and Yakov have worked with using the technologies on a testing basis, and we've seen some success in being able to delay that progression. Again, there's more that we need to do around that, but it looks very, very promising. And by the way, I'll say again, I'm happy to have a conversation around some of these indications and our specific plans.
Great, thank you for that answer. Anybody else who has any questions for the three of us, please feel free to use that Q&A and chat. I know we're getting close to our 1 o'clock stop time, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to go over that time just a bit. Ellyn, Laate, at the moment, while people are still thinking, if they have any questions, do you have anything in specific for the people in the presentation now, or the people that may be watching this recording in the future that you would want to leave them off with?
I guess what I would say is to definitely be curious and be aware that these technologies exist. Many people have felt very hopeless as it relates to their healthcare and some of the treatment cycles they're on. There may very well be options in neuromodulation that you are going to want to consider. And as our founder Hank says, rather than talk about the golden goose, you should definitely get out and try that golden goose. To when I say golden goose, the technology that may have potential to help. At least with our wellness technologies, there's no downside. The only downside is maybe it won't have an impact on where you're at. That's the downside. So I would just say, be curious, learn what you can about the industry, and understand the power, again, no pun intended, of electroceutical technologies.
And if you know somebody that is curious about what we described and you want to try it out, please just contact us. Let us know. If you're in the greater Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York area, it's pretty easy for you to get to us. And as you saw, we're going to have 5 locations by the end of the second quarter throughout the East Coast. So if you want to try it then, please pop on by and just let us know. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ellyn, Laate, for your time and the presentation you gave us today. Anybody in the presentation or watching this recording in the future, I highly suggest that you use that contact information they gave a little while back in the presentation. If you have any questions for Ellyn or Laate, I'm sure they'll be happy to help. And if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to contact Camaplan. Likewise, I would be happy to help. And yeah, one more time, thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Very much.